If you missed your favorite show or interview, visit episodes on our website at theworldtoday.news. Now there really is no reason to miss out on anything on theworldtoday.news.
Charlie lived his life as a warrior for truth and for freedom, every single day choosing to step into the arena armed with the Constitution, sparring through debate on the battlefield of ideas, fighting for the heart of our democratic republic and the unalienable rights endowed upon every one of us by our Creator. Charlie lived what our founders envisioned: freedom, the right to speak even when we disagree. Freedom. I may not agree with what you say, but I will fight to defend to the death with my very life your right to speak. Free speech is the foundation of our democratic republic. We must protect it at all costs, because without it, we'll be lost. Charlie knew this. He lived it. Charlie stood in the arena armed with superior arguments, with truth, reason, propelled and motivated by his love for God, his love for others, his love for our great nation. His words were his weapons. He slayed ignorance, he cut through lies, and he woke people's minds, inspired people's hearts, and imparted wisdom every day. Now, for those of us who knew Charlie, and even those of you who may never have had the chance to meet him in person, we all know and experienced how Charlie spoke with a calm courage, not asking, "What will God do for me?" but instead praying, "God, use me for your will." He showed respect and compassion for everyone, even those who opposed him, and I think especially for those who opposed him, he invited them to his table or on his show saying, "Let's talk." Sitting with Charlie here in Arizona at ASU last year, seeing and experiencing him in action was truly a sight to behold. Because in Charlie, he sincerely wanted people to know the truth. Because it's the truth that sets us free. It is the truth that keeps us free. Now, Charlie, he chose our schools as his arena because he knows that they are meant to teach, to train our young people to think critically, to debate ideas, to test their strength through a clash of reason. But too often, these schools silence debate, saying words are violence and dissenting voices are hushed, and those who speak of God, those who speak the truth, simple objective truths like there are only two genders in these schools, they are told, "You have no voice." Charlie chose this arena to take these people head on, to challenge these institutions, these students and faculty, encouraging them to come, to speak honestly, bring your ideas, debate loudly, and think critically. And Charlie did this so well, he was winning, so much winning, so much so that the forces of darkness, hate, and evil were threatened by him and tried to silence him. History shows this dark pattern that when ideas cannot withstand scrutiny, whether it's the ideology of so-called religious fanatics or political fanatics, their defenders, terrified that their weak ideas will be exposed for what they are, turn to intimidation, censorship, and violence. They kill and terrorize their opponents, hoping to silence them. But in this evil that we have experienced, that Charlie faced, their flawed ideology is exposed. Because by trying to silence Charlie, his voice is now louder than ever. His message is more powerful and impactful than ever. The truths that he spoke have spread hundredfold. Charlie was fearless. But where did his fearlessness come from? The answer lies in Corinthians. Therefore, be always of good courage, and know that while we are at home in the body, we are absent from the Lord. We are of good courage, I say, and prefer to be absent from the body and at home with the Lord. Therefore, we have as our ambition, whether at home or absent, to be pleasing to him. So our call to action is now. Every one of us needs to be a warrior like Charlie, to take shelter in God, to draw strength and fearlessness from the Lord who sits within every one of our hearts, to stand together, continue the mission that Charlie dedicated his life to sharpen our weapons of truth, common sense, and reason, to train, to study, learn, and to speak, exercise our God-given right to speak, and carry that torch that shines brightly because of God's love. So right now, if you feel afraid or lost, confused, not sure exactly what to do, don't be. God says, don't be afraid. I am with you. I will strengthen you and help you. And he is with us. He sits within every one of our hearts, just waiting for us to choose him. To say, as Charlie did, God, use me for your will. To say, God, my life is yours. I am yours. My heart is yours. Let me serve you. Now is the time for us to step into the arena and to stand as warriors for freedom and truth and fight. May God bless you all. We love you, Charlie. May God bless this great nation. Thank you.
Well, there you are. That is just amazing. And I am a Tulsi Gabbard fan. Timothy Shea, Tulsi Gabbard would have to be, the word I would think would be amazing.
She is amazing. And, it's funny because in 2016, I dubbed her the most dangerous Democrat in America when she was running for president, because I saw in her the same thing I saw in Barack Obama, a very attractive, very intelligent messenger for that message, which at the time I disagreed with completely. I did not agree with Tulsi on pretty much anything when she was a representative from the state of Hawaii. And it just goes to show how people can grow. And she saw what her party was becoming. The president tonight said that they call themselves progressives. He likes to call them liberals. I disagree with the president on this. I can deal with liberals. I can do business with liberals. I can work with liberals. Bill Maher is a liberal. He thinks that bigger government is the answer to problems. I happen to think that it's more of the problem than the solution. But Bill Maher is a man of goodwill. And I've got to say, so is Van Jones. I have disagreed with pretty much everything Van Jones has ever said with regard to politics, but I give him tremendous praise for revealing the text message that Charlie sent to him the day before he died. Van didn't get it until after Charlie had died, but he went on Anderson Cooper, Van Jones did, and he read the text message. Charlie inviting him onto his show saying, let's talk like gentlemen. I'll be a gentleman, as I know you will be too. We can disagree while being agreeable. And Van did great tribute to Charlie, and I called him out on X. I gave him credit on X for doing that. And I think that we need to start speaking more to each other. And at the same time, we've got to fight with all of our might this red-green alliance, this Marxist Islamo-fascist marriage made in hell that's trying to take over the world, Mike.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think even things that happened to us on the weekend, I think I think free speech should be paramount to everything. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think we need to be civil. And generally, the world was very civil. A few years ago, you could have a discussion, a disagreement, and then you have a beer or a drink or a coffee later on, and you move on, because there was other parts of your life that you needed to adhere to, look after. Nowadays, I see there's, on both sides, I see a cult. And I see this cult, who can yell the loudest. And I think it is not good for society. It is not good for the world. It is part of the reason why the West is disassembling at the moment. And I think Charlie Kirk was the guy that could demonstrate this. So perhaps out of evil comes something good, that we can start to understand that we need to hear each other and not just our own selves. What did you think of the service?
Couldn't watch. Cried too many tears in the last few weeks. I turned it on when Erica came on, and was listening to the president when we went live here. But I couldn't watch it before. I figured I'll watch clips of the speeches later. It's still too close to the bone.
Mm-hmm. It's terrible. We actually YouTube have been. I mean, I was going to leave this to later. YouTube have been after us again because of the TNT days, and we don't know why. But as soon as we put something up, we had the Pulse, we had now we have the World Today, and they go after us. And I've never seen them in the X. But
Well, you should focus. Yeah, you should focus on building the channel on Rumble.
Yeah, well, we are. But even then, Rumble, I can tell you that we had occurrence with them, that they created all sorts of unhappiness for us. And I mean, we had one video just prior to TNT, but it was very close, so there's no separation. And we had, on that video, it had 3 million views, and which is not bad. The first time it hit 1.5 and it's million views, and it stopped. It just stopped. So obviously they throttled it. And then for some reason someone else released it 2 months, 3 months later. Did the same thing. It just rocketed. 1.3 million more views. And then it stopped. And we've had other videos up there that have had the numbers of the content. Some have had 400,000, but close to 400. And I've checked it a little while ago, and it said 130,000. I think no, so no, Rumble is just as bad. And I think if anyone needs to have some sort of security, you actually need to be on your own platform.
Yes, that's absolutely true. I saw it on Twitter. I joined Twitter, and by the end of the weekend, I had, 1,400 followers. And at the end of the first month, I had over 10,000 followers. And then I only got another 2,000 followers in the next 5 years, and then they nuked me entirely. And as for Mr. Free Speech, Elon Musk, I can't get at TimboTim62 back or at MAGA_Institute back. There's no such thing as free speech on X. No. It's all a big sham. But getting back to today, I got to say, Michael, you know how much I love Australia and how much I look forward to visiting your beautiful continent someday. I was deeply aggrieved to hear that Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom recognized a Palestinian state today. Don't you people realize that the Palestinians, whoever they are, have turned down a state every single time it's been offered to them? It's been offered to them 6 or 7 times at least, and they turn it down. And I would just ask your prime minister one question. Why are you recognizing a Palestinian state when Egypt has an armed guard, mined, razor wire topped wall at its border with Gaza?
I'm going to keep this. I can disagree with you. I don't agree with the Prime Minister, by the way, in many things. And as for the Palestinian state, I think before we talk about a Palestinian state, we need to make sure that we stop the killing, and then you can start talking. At the moment, it's just words. And sure, you might have 4 countries or 5 countries or 6 countries, 7 maybe. So what? Doesn't do anything else for it. I mean, you have 7 countries. How many countries in the world?
Well, I think it's symptomatic, right, of an underlying problem. Getting back to it, it's the Red-Green Alliance. It's the Marxist Islamo-Fascist alliance that's, quite frankly, it's looking to overtake Australia. It's looking to overtake Canada. It's pretty much already overtaking the United Kingdom. And we're fighting it here. Our state of Minnesota is now basically an Islamo-Fascist corrupt state, and they're working on Texas. Texas isn't nearly as Texan as it likes to think it is.
I think and I agree with you there too. I think that we have to separate both issues. One, stop the killing. That's the first issue. The other issue, I totally agree with you, and that if we in the UK, I would probably think before Christmas, that if you say anything bad, anything, if you highlight the discrepancies with Islam, you will go to jail. It will become a criminal offence. In Australia, we're heading to that now. Same thing with Canada. So I agree with you. And we played a clip the other day for the UK edition, and this child came home from school, 5 or 6 years old, and the mother filmed this and said, "What did you learn at school today? Did you learn about God?" And the 5 or 6-year-old child said, Allah created everything. And this is in a Western country, the UK, within England, and that child was taught that Allah was...
Well, at the risk of getting you permanently kicked off YouTube, I won't say what I usually say about Allah, but suffice it to say that it's not a force of good in the world.
And here's the thing, I mean, and if YouTube want to take me down on this one too, first of all, I have got nothing against any religion if it's a good religion. I've got nothing against religion. In fact, I'm very interested in Islam. But if you're in a Western country and which is based on Christianity, surely that country also deserves, with its religion, whether it's Christianity, Hindu, Buddhism, whatever, it deserves then to have the same respect. And if you are not allowed to say anything or question Islam, then why isn't that same law, why isn't it applied to other religions?
Well, it's because Islam isn't a religion, okay? It's a political structure. It's a theocratic political structure hell-bent on hegemony. It's been imposed under the sword everywhere it's gone, and its stated goal is global conquest. It believes that anywhere a Muslim sets his foot belongs to Islam. But like I said, it's not a religion. It's not uplifting. It's not good. It's not holy. I mean, just all the videos you see of screaming 9-year-old girls being carried away on the back of a donkey in her wedding dress. Well, she's terrified. I mean, it's just not. It's just not.
I do think that's a bit radical, Tim, but I do understand your sentiment. So I'm not saying that your sentiment is wrong. I'm saying what you're saying is wrong.
Look at us disagreeing while being agreeable. Yeah. Just don't let them watch us argue over Australian rules football versus American football, right, Michael?
Well, there's only one football code, and one is almost a religion.
One is almost, yes, and that would not be the Australian rules.
But it is. I can't believe you would say that. Incredible. And I'm an avid Australian rules fan.
I actually am too. My brother and I discovered it late night on ESPN one night back in the 1980s, and we've been hooked ever since. It's a fabulous game.
Hey, thank you so much. You'll now go to football heaven. Let's look at the shooting of Charlie Kirk. The inconsistencies in evidence. Do you think Robinson is a patsy?
I don't know. Let me just say what I replied to Andrew Kolek today when he came out and said that, Charlie was the man of steel and it's a miracle the bullet didn't go through. And we've not been given enough forensic evidence. We've not been given enough hard, proven details. I mean, Michael, we've been lied to so often by so many for so many years that none of us are going to believe anything until we physically, we're all doubting Thomases now. We're not going to take anything on faith ever again. In the political realm, I'm speaking. It was just, I don't know if Robinson is a patsy. All I know is that the whole thing stinks of another Butler-esque cover-up. How come we still don't know about the man who tried to assassinate Donald Trump? All that we know about him for sure is that when they got to the home where he allegedly lived, there weren't even any cutlery in the drawers in the kitchen. So
there's some amazing investigations happening at the moment with some investigative reporters, and it's still a bit early, but they're actually pointing to drones that could have been involved. And one of the comments from one of the hosts of this particular show said that as in forensic evidence being most likely always correct, if you look at the public data available, such as flights and stuff like that, that is also forensically upholding, and it's something that's going to that would stand up in a court of law. And he's saying that they've noticed a plane that was involved. Questions were, was it owned by the government? Why was it flying at 600 feet?
I have an update on that.
Yes.
Apparently, the transponder was not turned off. And again, this is what they're saying. Who knows whether it's true, but apparently the transponder was not turned off. It's just that in the rural area, it wasn't picked up because it was flying so low. But again, why was it flying so low?
Yes.
Again, Michael, questions abound. Let's just leave it there.
Yeah, and I think it will develop, but at this stage, it's all conjecture.
Cash came out with a very detailed post on X today, and you should look at it. He did say that they're conducting a thorough investigation, that the public does not have every piece of evidence that FBI has. And then he listed all the things they're looking at, and they're looking at everything we just discussed.
What about the real reason Kimmel was fired?
That's easy. That's easy. He got fired because his ratings sucked. He was third out of fourth in the late night ratings, of course, with Greg Gumbel being number one, Greg Gutfeld being number one. But he got fired because a third of the affiliates said we're not running his show. And if the affiliates preempt the network show, the network doesn't get paid for that show. So the beautiful thing about all this, Michael, the pedophile affiliations didn't do it. The transgender push didn't do it. But we finally got the left to boycott Disney.
His lack of talent. Looking at Minnesota, it's drowning in fraud. How did this get so bad?
Michael, the Democrat Party is basically the largest money laundering operation in the country. It puts the mafia to shame. The mafia would be embarrassed to run as many scams on the public as the Democrat Party has. It's just the same old story. The NGOs get the money. They don't deliver the services. They give the kickbacks to the politicians. It's one massive money laundering operation. And mark my words, for this, people will start to go to prison. And it's not just Minnesota. It's just that Minnesota, with its Somali population, in conjunction with the Democrats like Tim Walz, happens to be ground zero for this in the United States. But, look at New York City. I think a lot of people are going to go to prison there. One thing has come out, though, about Ilhan Omar that people don't realize, and yes, it's been proven that she did marry her brother. The documents came out this week. She is a brother marrier. Her family were not refugees. Her family were part of the Marxist leadership of Somalia, part of the government that was overthrown. They weren't fleeing persecution and oppression. They were fleeing justice. Well, maybe they ought to be sent back to Somalia, to face justice.
How did she rise to power? Who funded her?
That's the question that they're looking into. everybody talks about George Soros, and he's a big part of it. But the network is much larger than George Soros. There's a network of billionaires that are, to a person, they're all Bond villains, okay? This is like Spectre, where they all get around the table.
It's incredible. I just, is she that powerful?
She's pretty powerful.
Lordy Lord.
She's powerful enough for the reputed conservative Corey Mills, who got married by an Islamic terrorist mufti in an Islamic terrorist mosque, to speak out in support of her. So take that what you will.
The swamp. It looks like
it's both parties. This is not Republican versus Democrat. This is good versus evil.
Yeah, the swamp looks like the Atlantic Ocean at this stage.
Yeah.
And in fact, you could almost say it is, because on the other side, you've got also Starmer's mob, which are probably part of the swamp anyway.
Well, don't forget, too, Michael, when you drain a swamp, now you've got all the creatures to deal with, right? You've got all the alligators, salties, and boa constrictors you've got to apprehend.
I've tried to watch this thing on I think it's Disney, called Alien Earth or something. And truly, I've watched the first two. I thought, no, I can't do any more of this. But it does remind me of those creatures you mentioned coming out of the swamp. And there's Omar, and there's, I mean, look at all the Democrats. Yeah. I mean, the whole lot. I mean, look at Nancy Pelosi. She's chief swamp rat or monster. She's fantastic.
Well, and Chuck Schumer and Nadler and the whole lot of them. They're just, yeah.
What a great bunch. Yeah, we're proud to be with them. No, we're not. Timothy Shea, if somebody wants to find out more about you, how do they do that?
At The Reckoning TNT on X.
You're still there?
I'm still there by the skin of my teeth. Survived 2 attempted assassinations last week. I won both of my appeals.
That's funny. That's funny. But, onward and upward, as I would say. Today is it's an incredible day. I'm just thinking.
Well, that's our motto. That's our state motto here in New York State. Excelsior, meaning ever upward.
But it's an incredible day, thinking about the Charlie Kirk and the effect he had on people. Just finally, do you think this will do, in the long run, do you think it'll do much good, or will people just go back to old habits?
I think actually this is going to persist. Unfortunately, and this is yet another legacy of Jorge Bergoglio, Pope Francis had kept Charlie from converting. He was very close to converting. He died with wearing a St. Michael's pendant, which is St. Michael with the St. Benedict medal behind him. Eric is now wearing that. But Charlie, a Catholic Charlie would have been unstoppable. He would have led millions to the church, and unfortunately he was taken from us too soon. But I think with the explosive growth in TPUSA chapters, requests for new chapters, in all the affiliated operations that they have, donations have poured in. It's going to keep going. Erica's going to be the CEO. I think that Charlie's legacy will be enduring. I said I'll leave you with this. The best post I saw in the past week since last we spoke was that the left has no idea what they've done. They just assassinated the big brother to an entire generation of young men.
Well said. Timothy Shea, always a pleasure. We'll do it next week. And don't forget, because you're an Australian rules football follower, on your Friday, which is our Saturday, it's the big one called the Grand Final. So you need to watch it between the Brisbane Lions and, of course, Geelong, the Cats, which doesn't mean much to you, but it'll be a great game.
We're looking. I have a prediction, Michael.
Yes.
The feline team is going to win.
Had to think about that one. Good on you. Thank you.
Beauty cover.
This is The World Today, mate.
The conversation continues.
How ridiculously complicated they've tried to make this global warming argument.
Today's News Talk, The World Today.
And back again. Just had an enjoyable conversation with Timothy Shea. Grant Newsham, retired US Marine officer and author, When China Attacks, a warning to America, is in DC today. So he can't be having his cup of Earl Grey tea looking at the waves around Kahala. He has to look at, what are you looking at? Just other buildings.
That's about it. You know, the splendor of like 11th Street and O Street. You know.
Splendid. That's another description I haven't used or heard used before when it comes to this part of Washington. President Trump seems to be dealing with Xi again. It's because of TikTok. Is this a good thing?
I don't think so. I don't know why this is going to work out any better than any other effort to engage with the Chinese, thinking that they want to make a deal that's mutually beneficial. It seems that to date, all they've come up with are some framework agreements, which is like an agreement to talk some more. The Chinese will pass out framework agreements like the old Confederates would hand out Confederate money, and with about the same effect. I'm afraid that Mr. Trump may end up getting embarrassed by all of this, sort of waving around a sort of peace in our time sort of piece of paper. You can see what I think about this. I don't know where he's getting his advice, but sometimes there's nothing more to talk about to somebody until they're willing to come and behave differently. And the Chinese have shown no indication of that, but they're glad to think we're glad to have an American president thinking that he's the guy who's going to be able to cut a deal. So that's my take on it.
Who do you think is advising him on this? And I do agree with you, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, if you said we'll give you $10 million, I think I could maybe come up with a name, but it would be half-hearted. I don't really know. What you do, they seems to be sometimes an ad hoc nature to the, at least the approach that the administration takes, at least to the Asia Pacific. I know there are people responsible for that area, but I'm not sure how much they get listened to or what advice they're actually giving. In the first Trump administration, you had people like Matt Pottinger, Miles Yu, David Stilwell, who were excellent, and they really understood China. This time around, it doesn't seem quite like there's sort of that cast of characters giving Mr. Trump some ideas about how to go about dealing with the Chinese.
Is TikTok that important?
In one sense, yes, because if after what's it been now, 2-3 years, we still cannot get rid of TikTok, shows you how much influence the Chinese have over our ruling class, over America's elite. The Indians, when they got rid of TikTok, they did it in 72 hours, and they went along with a few dozen other Chinese apps. They just turned them off, revoked their license, ability to operate. With us, we can't even get TikTok gone. And it appears that whatever deal's been cut, it gives the Chinese control over the algorithm, which is the big thing. So it is more important, you know, besides its obvious usefulness as a 24/7 broadcast into the minds of Americans, particularly young Americans. And it does seem to have shaped the way people think. So it's useful to the Chinese in that regard, and stopping it is a good thing. But there's other Chinese apps that can fill in the gap. But also, as I said, in the broader sense, it shows that America's ruling class still will not do what's necessary to protect Americans from the People's Republic of China. They've got plenty of America's best lawyers and lobbyists who make sure that nothing really gets done that's going to discomfort the Chinese Communist Party, unfortunately.
It's great. I mean, I look at X, by the way, and even though it's owned by private equity, which it is, I mean, it's not just Elon, it's a whole bunch of others. He's also, I mean, they can influence whichever way they want to. You can, what do they say? You can have all the free speech you want, just that nobody will ever hear it. So that itself is needs to be looked at, because if you've got free speech is free speech. And that's where I see TikTok, the grey area. And even though your explanation is suffices, TikTok still is part of that free speech, isn't it?
Oh, well, it's free speech in a certain sense, but we do have the right to defend ourselves. There's no obligation, moral or otherwise, that would suggest that we have to allow our enemies, people that have said they're going to destroy us, free access really to their cognitive systems. And if we do, well, if we're stupid, you can't blame the Chinese for taking advantage of it. But as I said, there's reasons why you do not want a regime like the Chinese Communist Party influencing your population. There's also a reason why the Chinese don't allow us to do similar things in China. It's why our social media is not allowed access to the Chinese minds, because they know it's effective. But if we're going to let them just have sort of free run, well, we shouldn't be surprised when we get a result we don't like.
Where are we at the moment with the US-China trade relations?
Oh, I think we're trying to work a deal out with the Chinese. It appears that they've unfortunately taken advantage of the 30 years of dependency that America has built up on the China market, particularly for things like rare earth materials, pharmaceuticals, and the raw stuff you need to make military explosives, night vision devices, that sort of things, and also commercial magnets is another example. And the Chinese have got us over a barrel. And I think that explains why the Trump administration has had to tread so carefully after its initial tough talk about these 100% tariffs on China, that the dependency is such that they think the economic harm to U.S. industry would be so bad that they've had to back off. So it's hard to cut a deal or to reach some sort of agreement with the guy who's sort of got you. Of course, there are things that we could do if we're willing to play those cards that would cause the Chinese no end of trouble as well. But China does not have, they're not defenseless, say, as they were 10 years ago. That has made it harder to reach an agreement that we find satisfactory. If we were smart, we would, as fast as possible, cut those dependencies, and in short order, we would find that the tables are turned. I don't see any sense of urgency on our side, however.
You mentioned that basically China does have an advantage at the moment, which if you look at Donald Trump, he always likes to have the advantage himself. How does Donald Trump or the US wrestle back the advantage from China?
Well, you've got to sort of go cold turkey. If there's things you're dependent on China for, well, don't be dependent. Starting with, as I said, pharmaceuticals and rare earth minerals are the big thing. And you've simply got to go about it with a sense of urgency. The state of Montana alone could probably take care of a lot of your needs if you just went through the tailings and old abandoned mines. I know we have the ability, we have the capabilities to do this, but you've got to want to. And once again, it is that the Chinese influence over America's elite classes, over our political class, that really prevents us from doing what's necessary. But you've got to realize that you're dealing with a country that hates you and wants to dominate you at a minimum, and then make it so that you are not dependent on these things that you need to actually have a sort of a productive modern economy. And this is a problem for Mr. Trump, obviously. He's dealing with really the results of 30, 40 years of fecklessness, if not just malevolence on the part of America's leadership that got us so deeply into bed with the PRC.
Let's look at soybeans. How is the US being played at the moment?
Well, what's going on is the American farmers sell about $13-14 billion of soybeans to the Chinese every year, and that's a lot of money, and the farmers need it to stay in business. And the Chinese, however, have not ordered any this year from the Americans. They're buying them all from Brazil, and Brazil probably makes enough to meet Chinese needs. So this has got American farmers pretty angry, and they are calling up the White House. They're sending letters to Capitol Hill, to the administration, saying, you got to do something so the Chinese will buy our soybeans. And that is the Chinese game plan, is you get American interests to lobby the American government for what China wants. And what China wants is America to make other concessions on, say, technology exports to China, so that we're not going to restrict those because we want China to buy soybeans. And China, at some point, I think they're going to break down and say, "Oh, okay, you've convinced us. We're going to buy them, but you have to you have to go easy on us on some other things. And in particular, don't ask questions about where the Wuhan virus came from. Don't do anything about fentanyl. Don't ask too hard about where it comes from or what China isn't doing to stop it. And so in exchange for those concessions, they'll probably buy some soybeans, farmers will be happy, and this will be declared really a victory by the United States. But as a practical matter, the Chinese would come out of this very well. For the one reason is that they use soybeans to make other products like adhesives, printer inks, pharmaceuticals, supplements, and they sell these things to the West, earn foreign currency, and so they come out making about 4 times as much of that original purchase of American soybeans. So they act like, oh, you really got us this time, Mr. Trump. But, please, it hurts so bad. Please, let's do it again next year if you don't mind. The American Soybean Association does not want to hear what I just said. And it doesn't seem like it's very well known in Washington either, though I would say if I can figure it out, probably most people can. So that's what I mean by getting played. The Chinese will demand some concessions, and we will also think, well, they helped us out by buying our soybeans, so let's give them some concessions. So at the end of the day, I think China just might come out ahead.
Now, here's something that'll make you chuckle. Australia has been telling all these South Pacific nations not to do business with China. Don't take money from them. We'll give you all the money. So we're trying to do what China wanted to do, is to cement ourselves in these different smaller island nations. That's not a bad idea. But then what we do in Victoria, we go to China and say, we need your help. We need your money. We need your investment in our country. So what we're doing is we're telling, on one hand, we're buying the South Pacific so the Chinese can't. But one step down the track is that China is buying Australia. And the idea of Victoria going cap in hand to China, wanting basically to do another big deal with them to provide the funding for railways and other infrastructure. What's your thoughts on that?
It's pretty stupid. Why on earth would anyone get in bed with the People's Republic of China when it comes to business? You will always lose your shirt. You're going to get yourself also dependent on the Chinese. They're going to dominate you, and they will have sized you up at that point as someone who is not smart enough to realize how they're going to get fleeced on this. And there's also a sort of a moral aspect to all of this, particularly when you look at how these politicians from this party in particular claim that they're morally superior to everyone. And okay, so now they're just begging a country that harvests organs from live prisoners, that has concentration camps, that has black prisons, that wouldn't even know what the words rule of law meant. And they're begging that country to do business in Victoria. Begging your pardon, I remember, I'm old enough, and you probably are too, to remember when the word hypocrite had a bad meaning. Apparently it doesn't anymore. But to get in bed with the Chinese you'd think that after all these years, all this empirical evidence, that they would have some idea that this is not a good idea. And as you correctly noted, you tell the Pacific Island nations, don't do business with the Chinese, ignore them. And now you're out rattling the tin cup, a big tin cup, actually. It's hard to imagine. It's as I said, it's either hypocrisy or just people who are not very bright, and it could be both, I suppose. But this is one that is hard. There's really no explanation for this.
What about national security, though? I mean, this was attempted by Dan Andrews in Victoria a few years ago, and it was knocked on the head because of national security issues and so forth. This time it's a different government in power, federal government. The state government is the same political ilk of the federal government. Do you think by doing these deals, do you think the federal government will again say, no, you can't do these deals because of national security? Or do you have that feeling that they'll let this one go through if they let it go through Part B to this, what would be the ramifications to our security?
Oh, I think they're going to let it go. I think there's a predilection for China, for the Chinese communist system, unfortunately, in Australia's ruling party. So I don't expect it's going to be shut down at all. But the Chinese are always looking at will. They're always sizing up the people they're dealing with. And when they see people kowtowing, just pure supplicants, hoping to do business, get some Chinese money, they know that those are people who at the end of the day are not going to defend themselves. And you keep the pressure up, you keep the subversion up, you're going to see more Chinese ships and aircraft down in the region, subversion of the Pacific Islands. And they know at the end of the day, Australia doesn't have the nerve to take them on. And once again, you get political and economic support. Is real, those relationships are real influence. And you're going to have a constituency, you already have it in Australia, that actually sees China as the best bet. And you hear that excuse. You've been hearing it for years. Well, we want China to be our economic partner, but we want the Americans to be our security partner. Well, that's not a deal that's going to sell in the U.S. And the Chinese are going to tell you at one point, well, we're not just your economic partner, we're your military partner too. And that will come. It may not be tomorrow, but this is incredibly short-sighted. And there really is no excuse for it, because this is not uncharted territory. We know the nature of this regime in China. We know what it thinks of Australia. You should remember, didn't a Chinese fellow refer to Australia as like the gum on your shoe? And that list of demands that came out from the Chinese embassy, that Australia will do these things if you want to get along with us. So one can kind of tell where this is going to end up. And the only people who are happy are in Beijing.
Yeah, it was very evident with Dan Andrews at the SCO summit, and he was there shaking hands with Xi, mixing with all the SCO hobnobs, and the intentions were then laid out for all to see. I don't think it'll be the last state either. I think all the other Labor states will also probably put their hand out for China to help finance Belt and Road and that sort of stuff. Again, can you just let us know what happens when you default on China?
Oh, they will get their pound of flesh from you. And, I don't know that they're going to come and collect on the debt, but it makes you look stupid. If you get in debt to the Chinese, it's like having them owing money to the mafia, but not as good. And it makes you look ridiculous. And it looks as if I think Australia used to make things. I think they used to be able to build things and also get funding from like countries that don't take organs from live prisoners. What's happened to this country? But it just means you're a supplicant. And, maybe that Australian guy, the Chinese guy who characterized it as the gum in the shoe wasn't all that far off. I'm being a little mean there, but it would be nice because there's a lot of Australians who don't like this, of course. But this is just pure cravenness on the part of the Victoria state government. And I think that you may find at the federal level that the same thing happens. One funny story, this was maybe in the late 2010s. I spoke at a defense conference in Darwin. It was about using Northern Territories for military training, etc. And I gave my pitch. But at the break, the Australian news guys interviewed me. And that day, the governor of Northern Territories was going up to China to explore business opportunities. And they asked me what I thought of that. And I think I said, this is like, you have to be an idiot to do this. And apparently within like 30 minutes on the Australian news, or ABC, whatever, the headline was "Retired Marine Officer Calls Governor an Idiot." So I felt like a bad guest, to say the least, but I haven't changed my opinion.
But see, the ABC, which is the national program station here, network paid by the taxpayer, and is the voice of the government. They're nicknamed the Communist Network. They're terrible. They are very, very. I mean, look at the renewables here, or as one senator calls them, the unreliables. And here we are. We're promoting, as Donald would say, windmills, got all the solar farms, everything to get rid of that terrible, terrible steam stack that comes out of a big chimney. And yet you have Australia, led by Victoria at this stage, heading to China to do business with them. And their concern about, the so-called climate change catastrophe is, what do you mean? There's nothing happening. So it's just quite ironical. Same thing with the South Pacific nations. I mean, look at Australia. We offered to buy New Guinea an extra wing to the Parliament House, and it still hasn't gone through. They probably want the whole Parliament House paid for. I don't know how you don't throw up every day dealing with things like this, because truly it is hypocritical at its best, isn't it?
Yeah, you find that the Chinese are just running rings around the Australians and around us when it comes to the political warfare, the influence. And we could get the military part right in the Pacific and still lose. And that deal that Australia thought they were going to sign with New Guinea is pretty much proof of it. When they have to run off to China to explain the deal to them, we could use a little more clear thinking when it comes to how we're getting along down here. But depends on what time of day you ask me, that I would not be particularly optimistic that we'll get it right.
Good on you. Enjoy your cup of tea, by the way, in Washington. Hopefully the water, because the actual water has an effect on the taste of the tea, and the water in Oahu is very, very, it's very good water.
Potomac River is even better. It's just delicious. Yeah.
Grant, if somebody wants to find out more about you, how do they do that? On the back of a Twinings tea packet, maybe.
That helps, yeah. I'm on X, Newsham Grant, and grantnewsham.com. You'll get all the stuff I write. So I'm easy to find.
Fantastic. Grant Newsham, Colonel Grant Newsham, retired US Marine officer and author, thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the flight back to Oahu. Whenever we went back to Honolulu, we couldn't wait to get back. It's always nice to get off the rock, but it's always better going back, isn't it?
It can be, yeah. Generally speaking, yes.
Good on you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir.
Sure, my pleasure.
This is The World Today.